Hi, welcome. We are trying a new thing, sitting outside in the yard today because it's so nice outside. Um, so we'll see how this goes. It's exciting. It's really nice outside, and um, if you guys want to join us next time there's a nice day out, we can try it with more people. So
Yeah.
just let us know. So we'll jump right into our 30 minutes of meditation and then go into the Sutra study. So we'll begin our meditation. Alright. We'll take a few minutes to stretch our legs and then go into the Sutra study. So we'll see you in a couple minutes. Okay, so we'll start up where we left off, which is page 101. All right. Again, Ananda, why are the 18 fields or realms of the senses the absolute? Ananda, as you know, eyes and form are causes that beget sight perception. Is this sight perception created and conditioned by the eyes or by form? Ananda, if it is created by the eyes, in the absence of both form and the void, there will be nothing to be differentiated. Then what is the use of this perception even if you own it? In this instance, what you see will be neither blue, yellow, red, nor white. Where then can you show its boundary? If it is created by form, when you see the void, which means that form is absent, your perception should cease to exist. Then why do you still distinguish the void? When form changes, you notice it, but your perception is unchanging. Then where can its boundary be? If perception follows the change of form and undergoes its own change, there would be no boundary. If it is unchanging, it should be permanent. Then it should not perceive the void. If it is created by both the eyes and form, these two are separate when united and unite when separate. If so, both intermingle. Then how can there be the realm of the eyes and that of form? Therefore you should know that both causal eyes and form, as well as the created perception, do not exist, and that the eyes, form, and the realm of form are neither causal, nor conditional, nor self-existent.
Can we highlight a paragraph up there or a sentence? Starting with when form changes, you notice it. And continue down to it should not perceive the void.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You want me to add any note to that?
Today's date is fine.
Oh, it'll be time-stamped.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Ananda, as you know, ears and sound are causes that beget perception of sound. Is this perception created and conditioned by the ears or by sound? If it is created by the ears, this organ, in the absence of both disturbance and stillness, does not discern anything, and is therefore devoid of objects. If it cannot discern, how can it create perception? Assuming that hearing, perception, begets perception by the ears, since no hearing occurs in the absence of both disturbance and stillness, how can the ears, which are form, unite with external objects to produce perception, and where can the latter's field be? If it is created by sound, that is, if it depends on sound, then it should have no relation to your hearing. But if hearing ceases, there will be no sound. Now, assuming that it is really created by sound, and that sound exists because of hearing, then your hearing of sound should be perceived by the ears. If this sound is not perceived, it would have no relation with the realm of ear perception. If it is heard, it is already sound. And since it is hearing's object, then who knows the perception? If there is no such knower, you will be like grass and plants. There cannot be a mixing of sound and hearing to create between them an intermediate realm, for such a realm cannot be at the center in the inner organ, or in the outer sound. Therefore, neither ears nor sound exist as causes, nor perception by the ear and ears. Sound and its field are neither causal nor conditional nor self-existent.
Ananda, as you know, the nose and smell are causes that beget the perception of smell. Is this perception created and conditioned by the nose or by smell? If so, Ananda, what is this nose? Is it that hooked and fleshy part of your face with which you sniff? But this piece of flesh belongs to the body, and the body's perception is called touch. The body is not the nose, and touch is its object. If the nose cannot be named, where is it? If it perceives smell, where is that perception in your mind? If perception comes from a part of the face, it is touch and has nothing to do with the nose. If it comes from the void, it should be known by the latter instead of being felt by the flesh. If so, the void should be you, and your body would feel nothing. Then there would be no Ananda anywhere at the moment.
If smell is the knower, it should know itself and would have nothing to do with you. If good and bad smells create your nose, they should not produce sandalwood and fetid herbs. Without the latter, smell your own nose and see if it is fragrant or offensive. Since fragrance cannot stink and stench cannot be fragrant, if you can smell both, you should have two noses. And now, as you ask me about the Dharma, there should be two Ananda. Then which Ananda are you? If there is only one nose, and if fragrance and stench are not two different smells, they can be mistaken for each other, which proves that neither exist. If so, where can the field of smell perception be established? If it is created by smell, and if perception exists because of smell, it is like your eyes, which can see things, but not themselves. So that perception which exists because of smell should not scent it. If it does, it cannot be created by smell. And if it does not, it is deprived of that perception. Since smell does not depend on perception, it has no field. If perception cannot smell, its field cannot be established on the basis of smell. Since there is no intermediate perception, there would be neither inner nor outer. The smell perception is false. Therefore, neither nose nor smell as causes nor the field of smell perception as their creation exist, while nose, smell, and its field are neither causal nor conditional nor self-existent.
Ananda, as you know, tongue, arid taste are causes that beget perception by the tongue. Is this perception created and conditioned by the tongue or by taste? Ananda, if it is created by the tongue, then sugar cane, sour black plums, bitter wort, rock salt, wild spikenard, ginger, and cassia would be tasteless. Taste your own tongue and see if it is sweet or bitter. If it is bitter, who is the taster? Since the tongue cannot taste itself, who experiences the taste? If it is not bitter, no taste can come from it. Then how can it be conditioned? If perception derives from taste, it would be taste itself. But like the tongue, it cannot taste itself. Then how can it distinguish various flavors? Again, since there are many flavors which cannot come from a single source, there should be as many perceptions. If there is only one and it is created by flavors, then all salt, insipid, sweet, and bitter flavors should unite and become one. Then there would be no discerning. If so, there would be no perception. How can the tongue taste and perception be conditioned? The void cannot make your mind perceive, since tongue and taste cannot unite to create an intermediate. Where is the latter's field? Therefore tongue and taste as causes, and the field of taste perception as their creation, do not exist. While tongue, taste, and their field of perception are neither causal nor conditional nor self-existent.
Ananda, as you know, body and touch are causes that create the perception of touch. Is this created and conditioned by the body or by touch? Ananda, if it is created by the body, what does the latter perceive when there is neither contact nor separation? If by touch your body would not be needed, then who can, without a body, feel contact and separation? Ananda, objects do not perceive touch, but the body knows and feels it. Body's perception is revealed by touch, and touch through the body. Therefore, body and touch are inseparable, but they are not the same, and so originally they have no home. When touch contacts the body, it becomes the body, and when it ceases, it becomes the void. Since there are no such things as inner and outer, how can there be an intermediate between them? When there is the field of body perception, where then is the field of body perception? Therefore, body and touch as causes and body perception as their creation do not exist, and all three are neither causal nor conditional nor self-existent.
Ananda, as you know, intellect and dharma are causes that create the sixth consciousness. Is this consciousness created and conditioned by intellect or by dharma? Ananda, if this consciousness is created by intellect, the latter should contain dharma to reveal its own existence. In the absence of dharma, your intellect cannot create anything. Even if it does create consciousness, what is the latter's use of it what is the latter's use if it is not confronted with causal ideas? Moreover, both your mind and your thinking process discern ideas and things. Are they the same as or different from each other? If the same, consciousness is just intellect. Then how can it be created by intellect? If different, consciousness would be unconscious. Then how can it come from intellect? If it is also conscious, then then tell me what intellect and consciousness are. Therefore, they are neither the same nor different. Then where is the field of consciousness?
If consciousness is created by dharma, all things in the world are inseparable from the five sense data of form, sound, smell, taste, and touch, which clearly correspond with the sense organs and are not affected by the intellect. If your consciousness depends on dharma for its existence, look carefully into dharma and see what they look like. For beyond form and voidness, motion and stillness, clearness and obstruction, union and separation, and birth and death, where can dharma be found? For dharma arise simultaneously with form, voidness, etc., and vanish with them. Since there are no causes leading to their creation, what are the forms and shapes of dharma? If these do not exist, what then conditions dharma? Therefore, intellect and Dharma as causes, and the field of the sixth consciousness as their creation do not exist, and they are neither causal, nor conditional, nor self-existent.
Ananda said to the Buddha, World-honored one, that Tathagata has often spoke of cause, condition, and the state of self as such, and has taught us that all changes and transformations in the world are due to the mixture and fusion of the four elements. Why does he now wipe out all concepts of cause, condition, and the state of the self as such? I do not understand. Will he be compassionate enough to explain in full to all living beings the mean which is beyond all sophistry?
The Buddha replied, "You are tired of and have sought to abandon the Hinayana teaching on the Shravaka and Pratyeka Buddha stages, and so wish to seek unsurpassed Bodhi. I will therefore teach you the supreme truth. Why do you still restrict yourself by reasoning frivolously about false causes and conditions? Although you have listened to me a lot, you are like one who is accustomed to talk about medicines, but who, when he sees them, cannot pick out those which are good. This is why the Tathagata says that you are really to be pitied. Listen with attention to what I tell you, so that all who practice Mahayana in the future can attain reality." Ananda kept silent, awaiting the holy teaching.
Ananda, as you have said, when the four elements mix and fuse, they cause all kinds of transformation in the world. But they cannot mix and unite if it is against their nature, just as the void cannot with form. On the other hand, if they so mix and fuse, they are transformations and owe their existence wholly to their mutual dependence. They are thus subject to creation and destruction in endless succession, like the ring of fire caused when a torch is waved in a circle.
Ananda, this is like water, which after becoming ice, can change back into water. The element of earth. Look at the element of earth, which ranges in size from the great earth to a tiny speck of dust. Split this speck, which is near to nothing, and reduce it to the finest mote on the extreme border of form. Then split it again, and it becomes the void. Ananda, if this mote can be reduced to nothing, you should know that form comes from the void.
You now ask about material changes, which you attribute to the mixing and uniting. Take, for instance, this mote, which is nearest to the void. How much voidness should be mixed and united to produce it? But it is absurd to suppose that this can be done by uniting motes. Since a mote can be split and reduced to voidness, how many particles of form should be fused together to create the void? The union of form produces form but not voidness. The union of void produces voidness but not form. Form can be split up, but how can the void unite?
You do not know that in the Tathagata store, both form and the void arise from self-nature, and are identical with each other, and that the element of earth is fundamentally pure and clean, embraces all in the Dharma realm, and manifests because the minds of living beings know and distinguish in accordance with the laws of karma. Ignorant worldlings wrongly attribute this to cause, condition, and the state of the self as such, because their consciousness differentiate and discriminate without their knowing that the language they use has no real meaning. That sounds interesting.
You use a highlight tool. Oh, you could do that too. I didn't know that would do it. So that last sentence is going to be repeated a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Ananda, fire has no ego but exists because of causes. When people in a town are about to prepare their meals, they use mirrors of polished metal to obtain fire from the sun. Ananda, about mixture and union, take this community of myself and 1,250 bhikshus. Though the group is one, each member has their own body, clan, and name, like Sariputra, who is a Brahmin. Uru Vilva, and Kasyapa, tribesmen, and you, Ananda, who are of the Gautama clan. Ananda, if fire comes from the mixture of fusion, when a man holds a mirror to obtain fire in the sun, does this fire come from the mirror, the moksha, or the sun? Ananda, if it comes from the sun, it can burn the moksha in your hand. If so, all the trees would be scorched. If it comes from the mirror and then lights the moksha, why does it not melt the mirror and burn your hand? But if you do not even feel the heat, how can the mirror melt? If it comes from the moksha, why does the latter require the sun and the mirror to make it burn? Look at the mirror held by the hand, the sun up in the sky, and the moksha, which originally came from the ground. How can fire travel elsewhere before coming here? The sun and the mirror are a very long way apart and cannot mix and unite with each other. Finally, fire cannot exist by itself. You do not realize that the Tathagata store, both fire and the void, arise from the self-nature and are identical with each other, and that the element of fire is fundamentally pure and clean, embraces all in the Dharma realm, and manifests because the minds of living beings know and distinguish. Ananda, you should know that fire is produced wherever a man holds a mirror, and that if mirrors are held up throughout the Dharma realm, fire will spring up everywhere in accordance with the laws of karma, and not in a given place and direction. Ignorant worldlings wrongly attribute this to cause, condition, and the state of the self as such, without realizing that it is because their consciousnesses differentiate and discriminate, and that the language they use has no real meaning.
Ananda, water is unstable by nature, for it either flows or is still. Great magicians in Sravasti, such as Kapila, Kakra, Padma, and Hasta, obtain water to mix with their medicines by exposing a crystal ball to the full moon. Does this water come from the ball, the void, or the moon? Ananda, if it comes from the moon, which is a very long way off, it should pass through the trees in the forest before reaching the crystal ball to flow into the bowl. If it does not flow through the trees, this shows that it does not drop from the moon. If it comes from the crystal ball, it should flow regularly, not only when the moon is full. If it comes from the void of space, which is boundless, it should flow everywhere, submerging everything between earth and heaven. If so, how can there be living beings to walk on the earth, fly in the air, and swim in the water? Think of all this again. The moon is in the sky, the crystal ball is in the man's hand, and the bowl is in front of him. So where does the water come from to flow? The moon and the ball are a very long way apart and cannot mix and unite with each other. It is absurd to say that this water does not come from any source. You do not know that in the Tathagata store, both water and the void arise from self-nature and are identical with each other, and that the element of water is fundamentally pure and clean, embraces all in the Dharma realm, and manifests because the minds of living beings know and distinguish. Thus, water flows wherever crystal balls are used to collect it, and if they are held up throughout the Dharma realm, it will flow everywhere in accordance with the laws of karma, and not in a given place or direction. Ignorant worldlings wrongly attribute this to cause, condition, and the state of the self as such, without knowing that it is because their consciousness differentiate and discriminate, and that the language they use has no real meaning.
Ananda, the element of wind has no substance, and neither moves or is still. When you join a gathering and adjust your robe, the hem brushes the person next to you, disturbing the air which fans his face. Does this wind come from the hem of your robe, from the void, or from the man's face? Ananda, if it comes from the hem of your robe, the latter should leave your body. As I preach the Dharma here, my robe does not move. Where can you find any wind in it? It has no hidden place where the wind can be stored. If the wind comes from the void, why does it not fan when your robe is still? The void is permanent, and so should be the wind. Then without the wind, there would be no void. You can feel when the wind stops fanning, but what indication can there be when the void ceases to exist? If the void can be created and destroyed, it cannot be void. And if it is, how can it create the wind? If the wind comes from your neighbor's face, it should also fan you. Then why does not your robe, when brushing against him, fan you back? Look into all this carefully. The robe which you adjust is yours. The face fanned is that of another bhiksu, and the void is still and does not move. Then where does wind come from? The wind and the void differ and can neither mix nor unite, while the wind cannot exist of itself without a cause. You do not realize that in the Tathagata store, wind and the void arise from self-nature and are identical with each other, that the element of wind is fundamentally pure and clean and embraces all in the Dharma realm, and manifests because the minds of living beings know and distinguish. If, Ananda, you move your robe, a light wind stirs, and if there is similar movement throughout the Dharma realm, there will be wind all over the world in accordance with the laws of karma, and not in a given place or direction. Ignorant worldlings attribute the element of wind to cause, condition, and the state of the self as such, because their consciousnesses differentiate and discriminate without realizing that the language they use has no real meaning. So, before we move on, wait, we have one more element. We'll read the last element.
Ananda, space is far from the river. People of different castes, such as Kshatriya, Brahmin, Vaisya, Sudra, Bharadvaja, and Kandala, who come to live there, dig wells to find water. Each foot of earth is replaced by a foot of space, and 10 feet of earth by 10 feet of space, so that the shallowness or depth of each well corresponds with the amount of earth removed. Does this space come from the earth, from the digging, or from itself as such? Ananda, if space exists of itself, why before the digging was it not unobstructed by the earth? Why was there only earth without any space being seen there? If space comes from the earth, it should be seen to enter the well when the earth is being dug out. If only the earth is removed without space entering the well, how can space come from the earth? If earth is not excavated and space does not fill the hole, both space and earth should be the same. Then why is not space dug out with the earth? If space comes from the digging, when the former is produced by the latter, no earth should be removed. If space does not come from the digging, why, when earth is being dug out, is space seen in the well? Think about all this and see where space comes from when a man uses his hands to dig earth to make a well. For digging and space are not in the same category and can be neither mixed nor united. And it is absurd to suppose that space exists of itself without coming from any cause. If space is perfectly all-embracing and essentially unmoving, you should know that it and the elements of earth, water, fire, and wind, which together are called the five elements, intermingle naturally and are merely the untreated and unending Tathagata store. Ananda, since your mind is deluded and you remain unaware of the real, the four elements in the Tathagata store, you should look into space and see whether or not it comes or goes, or neither comes nor goes. You do not know that in the Tathagata store, Bodhi and the void arise from the self-nature and are identical with each other. Because the element of space is fundamentally pure and clean, embraces all, and manifests because the minds of living beings know and distinguish, the 10 quarters, Ananda, are like an empty pit filled with space, which in accordance with the laws of karma has no given place nor direction. Ignorant worldlings attribute this to cause, condition, and the state of the self, as such because their consciousnesses differentiate and discriminate, without knowing that the language they use has no real meaning.
Okay, before we move on to the element of perception. So that was a lot, right? The first time I read this was probably a decade ago. And I had to take that line by line because it was confusing and it didn't make a lot of sense. And I think that it's really important, to have that confusion and work through the confusion and figure out what does it actually mean so that we can experience what the Buddha is talking about. Now, the interesting part is if we zoom out a little bit, why are we looking to locate the mind? That's the real question here. And when we look closer at what is boundlessness we know was defined further up, which Robert had us highlight actually. What's further up than I thought? Ooh, I'm a little ways. Okay. No. Almost. Wow, we've read a lot today. There we go. If perception follows the change of form to undergo its own change, then there would be no boundary. So from that, we can understand perception following the change of form. Remember, form is just naming. It's just naming and labeling. So if we look closely at this and we say, when does form change? And we can see that form changes constantly. We're constantly having thoughts, we're constantly labeling things. And, as we practice Supreme Bodhi, that slows down. As we practice Supreme Bodhi, that becomes a choice. But when we look at what is boundless, we can see that with the constant change of form, which is just all the time, if our perception also changes with the change of form, then there is no boundary, right? So, like if I'm looking at the table, and I say that is a table, and then I look at something else and say that is the floor, and say that is tile, that is the countertop, that's glass, whatever it is. If our perception also follows the change of form, we're no longer thinking about the table. So it really is being in the present moment. It really is in that moment we are following the change of form. We're not clinging to what form was a minute ago or like seconds ago. And so the whole question about where do the senses come from, where do the elements come from, while those are good questions to have and good things to explore, the practice is not about finding the answer. The practice is about realizing that the source of the elements, whether they can mix or unite, what they were before, what senses what, is not the question at hand. The question at hand is, noticing that our thoughts arise because we have sensory contact. Our thoughts arise because we create form by labeling things. And form arises because we have our knowing, understanding mind. I've seen the table before. I've called it a table before. Maybe it was called a table in the store. And so when I see it, I say table. That's essentially the progression there. And so really when we read this, we should be turning inward and looking at how the thoughts progress, not about how water doesn't come from the moon. And so that's why that last line that's repeated throughout each one of these, where was it? You also had us highlight this. Ignorant worldlings wrongly attribute this to cause, condition, and the state of self as such, because their consciousnesses differentiate and discriminate without knowing that the language they use has no real meaning. I mean, consider that, last sentence. We're hung up on this language. We're hung up on trying to understand where water comes from, where fire comes from, if our nose smells itself. And we're missing the point. We're missing the point that that's not really what the practice is about. And the Buddha goes into this detail because Ananda asks for it. And it clarifies it. It clarifies that it doesn't come from externals. And we can see that each one of these paragraphs ends with him explaining about how in the Tathagata store, the element, the sense, and the void arise from self-nature, which is you think about it and it exists because you thought about it. And they're identical with each other because there is no duality. We create the idea of duality. So once one exists, the other exists. So if I think about the table, then everything else that's not the table also exists, right? The element, the sense, is fundamentally pure and clean, which means fundamentally, in and of itself, the elements and our senses don't have form associated with them. They don't have thoughts associated with them. We create the thoughts, which makes them no longer fundamentally pure and clean. Well, it doesn't make them that, but we just can't see their fundamental purity and cleanness because it's covered up by our perception, our thoughts, forms that arise. And so these things all manifest because the minds of living beings know and distinguish. So I hope that's kind of helpful in navigating the seemingly confusing section of the Surangama Sutra. It, again, is really good to go line by line if you still are confused and figure out what does it mean. Also, if you want a more in-depth conversation about it, feel free to reach out so we can have that discussion for sure. I don't know how to get rid of this preview thing. Dang.
Looks like there's a X right there.
This is our life now. Just, it only exists because you perceive it exists.
Indeed.
Well, actually, on that, we only have 4 more minutes. Why don't we finish out the next section, which kind of leads into, I think, maybe, I don't remember exactly what this says, might tie this whole thing together again, but So continuing on, perception knows nothing by itself and only manifests through form and voidness. As you are now in Jedhavana Park, you see light by day and darkness in the evening. At night there is light when the moon shines and darkness when there is no moon. This light and darkness are discerned by the seeing. This is seeing of the same is this seeing of the same nature as light, darkness, and the void, or not? Is it the same or different from them? Ananda, if the seeing is the same nature, I'm skipping words here. Ananda, if the seeing is of the same nature as light, darkness, or the void, as light and darkness alternate, and when there is one, the other disappears, then if the seeing is one with darkness, it should vanish when there is light and vice versa. As the seeing disappears in both cases, why are light and darkness still seen? As they differ, it follows that the seeing is beyond creation and annihilation. If so, how can the seeing be the same as light and darkness? If the seeing is not the same nature as light and darkness, try to find out what this seeing looks like apart from light, darkness, and the void, without which there can be no seeing, like the hair of a tortoise and the horns of a hare. As light, darkness, and the void differ, where can the seeing be? As light and darkness are in opposition, how can the seeing equate with them? If there is no seeing without light, darkness, and the void, how can it differ from them? If you try to separate the void from the seeing, you will not find their boundaries. If so, why are they not the same thing? When you see light and darkness, your seeing does not change. So why does it not differ from them? If you look closely and minutely into all this, and examine it again and again, you will find that light comes from the sun, darkness from the moonless night, clearance from space, and obstruction from the earth. So where is the begetter of this essence of seeing? Since the seeing can discern, whereas void cannot, they can neither mix nor unite. And we cannot say that this essence of seeing comes from nowhere. You should know that perception by seeing and hearing, which pervades all, is essentially does not change, and boundless, unmoving space, as well as its moving counterparts, such as the elements of earth, water, fire, and wind, all of which are called the six elements, intermingle by nature, and are fundamental, untreated, and unending Tathagata store. You are infatuated by nature and do not understand that seeing, hearing, feeling, and knowing fundamentally come from the Tathagata store. The Tathagata store is just anything you can perceive, which is, essentially just been defined by defining the 5 elements, which makes up anything that we can perceive in this world. You should inquire into them and see if they pertain to birth and death. If they are one or many, if they pertain neither to birth nor death, and if they are neither one nor many. You do not know that in the Tathagata store, self-natured seeing is basically the enlightened perception, which is pure and clean, embraces all in the Dharma realm, and manifests because the minds of living beings know and distinguish. Like seeing which pervades the whole Dharma realm, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touching, as well as the activities of body and mind, have wonderful virtues, which are bright and universal, and so are not in a given place or direction. They manifest according to the laws of karma, but ignorant worldlings think wrongly that they are causal, conditional, and due to the self as such. Because of their consciousnesses, they differentiate and discriminate and do not know that their language has no real meaning. I think this is a good place to stop. It is 7 o'clock. So I'm gonna mark down stop for 8/20/26. And we will pick back up next Wednesday evening. So if you want to reread the section or re-listen to it on YouTube, again, we're posting this on YouTube. So if you missed last week or prior week, feel free to look back at previous videos to catch up. If there are any questions, please do share them. It's always nice to have a discussion, and it helps all of us as a Sangha to work through questions. So it's encouraged. Anyway, thank you for joining tonight and have a good evening. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.